Epik Mellon podcast, conversations with the real humans behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications. Brought to you by QA Cafe.
Welcome to another episode of the Epik Mellon podcast, where we humanize the people behind networking technologies, including people like Tzvi Skapinker from Friendly Technologies, who is my guest today. And like I end up talking about a lot of broad topics because just through quick QA Cafe, because we have so many, we touch many different places. On the show, we end up talking about different topics, but I feel like Svi and Friendly are in the wheelhouse of the thing that I talk about the most, right? And that is the wonder of CPE management and
Yeah,
the smart home and all and residential networks and the things I love, because at the same time of working on extremely technical things, I'm also the user of those things, and all of my friends and family who listen to this show are also the users of those things. So I hope they get something valuable about it too. Um, I am Jason Walls from QA Cafe, and this podcast is entirely funded by my employers at QA Cafe. But consequently, the opinions that I express or that Svi expresses in the course of this podcast do not reflect those of QA Cafe or its ownership, and I imagine it goes the same way for you. So we've checked our legal box so we can say whatever we want without consequences.
definitely.
um,
So thank you very much,
and
Jason. Thank you.
yeah. Yeah. The podcast is obviously, like I said, brought to you by QA Cafe, and I won't go into the super long version of all of the products that we offer because we're mixing stuff up right now. We're adding some new stuff and polishing off some old stuff. But those main products are CD Router, which is the industry standard test platform for broadband gateways, Wi-Fi devices, and other CPE. Um, and the other is CloudTrack, which is the way to collaborate on and work with packet captures as a team. Packet Viewer, which we just launched, which is a set of components that you can license and implement into any cloud management solution that has to look at packet captures and offer that to your users. And then also Passport, which is our test solution for smart home devices and other consumer electronics like set-top boxes, so that we'll run through a set of tests and make sure that it works very well before it ends up as a bad review of your product on Amazon.com. All right, that's my little advertising intro. All right, sweet, welcome.
Hey, Jason. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah,
And first of all, congratulations. I think it's been a year or even more for you
yeah.
having this wonderful podcast. I'm
I will tell you that, like in the history of things that I keep up with and don't abandon, this has been quite a success.
definitely, and I'm a follower, so keep on doing the good work, and I, I'll definitely join in the next year or so, to celebrate our yearly
Oh
chat, I
yeah,
think.
right. So much changes. So I just went through that with a
Yeah,
couple other guys. Yeah. Mhm.
we are in a world that is changing, and we see the technology involvement all the time, constantly.
Yeah.
And I know that we are talking about this internally, when we are ever meeting during our session. So we are talking about the how things are
Yeah.
evolving very fast.
No,
And I
it's really
think
true. And I like to think of us, um, people in our space as like change agents, right? So like, especially with you guys, right? You've been on the forefront of a lot of things, right? So
yeah.
for the audience, just talk a little bit about Friendly and the position that you guys are in and how you got to be where you are. Because this story is very similar for a lot of companies like yours, where it started as one thing and turned into another thing. And as a consequence, we end up being the change agents that drive that stuff.
Yeah, so that's quite interesting because Friendly, I think, was established somewhere in the late 90s, in 99, 98, and then um, had a very nice transition. And what actually happened, it's quite interesting because Friendly was established as a company in the early days of the internet. You remember those dollars, those hectic dollars that you needed to configure all the time. And when you wanted to configure your email address, you had to do a lot of things around that.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So, and you had the dollars, and the PPPoE dollars then came up. And, I know that there were also some cable technologies arriving and so on. So Friendly, one of the first pioneers in doing those dollars, right? So that was the first um, interaction that Friendly had within this domain. And Ilan, our CEO and founder, he understood how difficult it is for someone at home just to simple onboard and connect to your internet service provider, right? That was chaotic back in those days. And the more problematic issue was that, yeah, and if you wanted to troubleshoot something, you wanted to understand what's going on from the perspective of the ISP, that was even harder. So one of the first
Right, and it wasn't even something that really people considered at the
things
time,
that the
right?
company had developed was those dialers, right, to connect you to the internet. Yeah. So, and then there was, that's a very nice story about the transition and what happened, and the transition of technology as well, because uh, somewhere around 2004 or 2005, Friendly was dealing with a very large customer that wanted a solution for an application that a user will be able to install on his PC. Well, there weren't any available laptops at those days, right? So it was a PC, Windows 3.11, right? And they wanted an application that you will be able to control your router, your modem. It wasn't a router, it was actually a modem, and configure
Right.
something.
Because then that PC was directly connected to the wall.
Yeah. And tell that to the kids today,
Yeah.
Tell them that no, you cannot take your PC anywhere. Well, yeah, that was back in those days. So that was interesting because we were participating in an RFP for a very large customer back in those days. It was the early days of the company, 5 to 10 people were working in the company. So it was a very huge deal. And we lost. We never
Interesting.
got the opportunity to develop that specific application.
Huh.
So, of course, everybody were so, and that was before my time here, but these are the things that I hear from Elon. So everybody were, angry from one side and also disappointed that this happened. So what do you do when you're angry and disappointed? We're traveling, right? So Elon went to a convention, like we have, these meetings. It was around, I think, 2005. If it sounds, it was back in the days that TR69 was emerging, right?
Oh yeah.
2004, 2005, 2006.
Well, and if that was happening in the if the start of that was happening in the late 90s, just the time between that and 2005 and how much changed over that period of time was just amazing. Because
Yeah,
that changed from, and I've talked about this on the show before, that changed from dial-up serviced by people who were not the ISPs, right?
like us.
To yeah, to broadband, right? Yeah.
So that was actually, and what happened is that he came back from that convention, and he had an idea. Why should we invest with those applications that people will never use at the end and will be very problematic to use? Why not go and invest in developing an auto configuration server, right? The ACS. So that was the start of actually the company that we are at today.
Mhm.
And it grew exponentially throughout the years. So the best thing that happened to the company is that, first of all, we lost the deal. So that was the best thing that happened, because, and it shows also, um, if you have a vision, and people with vision, and they see how things can be, and how things, or where they would go, and what we want to do next.
Right.
So that was very important for the company, and for the growth of the company, and the focus as well, because the transition, and as you mentioned, very, the transition from dial-up to broadband, right? High speed links that we have today, fiber, ONTs. It happened in a very short period of time from our perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that our generation, we are basically around the same age, right? In our early 30s. Eh,
You heard it here first, folks.
so, yeah, but we are giving up our age when we're talking about dialers and
Yeah,
internet,
it's
and
true. It's true.
what
It's true.
happened, and so we are giving it up. But uh, basically, we saw the development of communication technology very rapidly,
Yeah.
from the days that, my first job was for uh, an international carrier, long distance calls, right? Whoever thought about this, whoever knows today that, yeah, we had phones that you could only use to call someone, and it cost and it cost so much. It was
Yeah. It
a
costs
long
so much,
distance
right?
call.
Well, and for the internet, right? So like when you had these dial-up services, right? In the US, it was AOL and Prodigy, and then bulletin board services. Uh, they were reliant on the fact that they could establish a place to dial in that was a local call for somebody, right? That was the only way. Otherwise, it would have been totally insanely expensive to ever go on the internet, right?
And then you had, the early days DDoS, like someone is calling to that and blocking, and no one else can connect, and you had those POPs, point of that you had to distribute. So the early days of the internet were very interesting from one point of view, because it's something new. It opened up the communication between people, and changed the way that we are communicating as of today, right? Because
Hmm.
it had a big impact. But what we saw then, in a matter of few years, and I was working on with voice technologies at the beginning, right? So we had like a time division multiplexing with PCM encoding. Well, that was back in the days, and then we had voice over IP coming in a very short period of time.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then we
The
had
the
video.
the anniversary of a lot of that work, of the laws that were changed, like so Jeff Pulver, the Vonage guy, right?
Yeah.
He just did a bunch of big, I think 20-year anniversary stuff for all the for the FCC changes that he got done. It's been all over LinkedIn.
And I personally think that our generation is, um, it's blessed, because we saw a transition of technology that it will be very difficult for others to see. I know, maybe in the next decade or so, but
Hmm.
um, we saw this big lap, or this big step in technology, and it's emerging, and it's developing constantly. And now I think we are in a position that, well, there is no actual problem today with bandwidth or throughput or whatever
Right.
we had in the past, right? If you had 64K, that was wow. You had a 64K channel, and that was wow, amazing. Today 1 gig is like, okay, I have a 1 gig connection at home, which is
Right.
fine. I have a fiber to the home, and this is fine. And streaming takes just 8 meg or
Hmm.
whatever
Hmm.
in HD, full HD. So it's quite reasonable. And so what else are we doing? People of vision, like we are in the company trying to do,
Hmm.
maybe not always, but we are trying to see. So what's next? And you're asking yourself always this question: what's going to be next? Like,
Hmm.
okay, so I hope that we will not have the same situation that Friendly had, like 20 years ago, to decide about the next step of the company and where are we trying to go forward. But what's next? And we are seeing the transformation from the access, right? From how to access the data now to, okay, what can we do with this data? How can
Right.
we learn something from this data?
Right.
Like
Right.
data analytics and so on. So yeah, I think we have a lot of things that are caught up for us, in the future.
Hmm.
A lot of interesting things that we can continue to develop and to provide to our customers. And that's very interesting because I was traveling 2 weeks ago. I was visiting our one of our customers in India,
Hmm.
and it's a cool thing because you see, I was visiting their offices, and there was a wall with the advances of technology. From the days of the telephone invention and so on, and you saw everything: telephone invention, then mobile phones, and satellite communication, and the wall is never ending. You are just walking by this wall, and you see the advance that and I think that we were fortunate because some of these technologies we saw them emerging. Definitely I remember what the days that we had dial-up connections, and today I have the fiber to the home connectivity. So that was very nice, and I think that we need, and well, it was fortunate for Friendly that we had people of vision like Ilan that came from that point that we said, okay, let's not do something which is app related, but let's go to the phase that we understand that we will need a way to control and to manage those customer premise equipment or devices in the future, right?
Right. 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 Right.
We are trying to refer them as devices. Maybe they will change a bit.
So were you guys already working on that concept when Tier 69 came along? And kind of like, oh, here it is. Let's build an ACS.
Yeah, well, that was interesting because I was sitting at dinner with Elon, when we were also traveling somewhere, and hearing about, it's like what happened in the past. It's like history, and this actually happened by chance, right? It was an accident, a good accident, right?
Yeah.
Because think about this: if we had won uh, that business and developed that application to run on the PC and so on and controlling, so yeah,
Right.
that would have taken all the company resources, and that would
Right.
have been nice for a year or two, and that's it, and
Yeah.
game over, and that
There are a
happened.
lot of companies that were stuck in that rut from having made those choices. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember some of them, especially around, if you remember, multiplexing. You had companies that were taking a lot of data, multiplexing it, and um, sending this over a compressed channel, and that was a big thing in the early and also mid 2000.
Hmm.
And then IP and internet protocol, well, emerged, and everything is history. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, well, definitely there are tremendous changes, and the decision to go with TR69 eventually shaped the company and how the company is
Right.
today, and also, you know we were fortunate that we had this vision from people with vision, like our founder and CEO, to drive us to the right position, because
Right.
otherwise this company would have been disappearing for in a very short period of time. And on the
And
other hand,
for those who are listening, just to clarify, I know that I don't like to assume that anybody's heard any show previously, right? So if you already know what we're talking about with Tier 69, uh, that is the name of a specification that is probably sitting on your home router right now. A protocol that makes it so that the operator, so that your ISP can manage that device, see what's going on, set it up for you, and do all kinds of cool stuff to make sure that your service works, right? And consequently, and I always get into this weird. As a person who is come full circle and is now surprised that in my life I am always defending ISPs and operators, right? Whereas 24-year-old me would not have done that, right?
definitely.
It's, I get the people who are like, oh, don't don't rent your router from them. They're screwing you on that. And I'm like, no, you really need to use the one they gave you.
It's better, you know. It's
But for that reason, because they all have systems, like your solution. What's the actual friendly solution product name called? I mean, you probably have multiple product lines, but
it's
yeah,
we're keeping it simple, like a TR69 device management ACS or
yeah,
a
yeah.
USB controller. We don't want to make people um, think differently.
Yeah.
So
So basically, the operators all have some system, like friendlies, and that's how they are managing your experience, and it's getting better, right? The more data they have.
the more data, the more actually it's less headache for the customer, because think about this. Before that, adding a service or connecting to an ISP provider, you had to wait for a technician to come to your home, to connect you to the
Hmm.
wall, to do something at the street or whatever.
To a point where it became a joke, right? It was a running gag. It's like, oh well, I guess they're going to be here between now and June. So
It's like, and today it's very simple. It's sometimes you're just getting the device, connecting it, and that's it. It's simple as that. And this is with the help of actually TR69.
yep.
It I think it was underestimated even today.
Well, it took a while to take off, just like USB, kind of like it's and people are like, oh well, the unanswerable chicken and egg question that we always get is like, oh well, how many people are using it? Well, I mean, plenty if you would just use it, right?
If you
Do you have to wait for everybody else to jump off the bridge before you do it?
just develop it and we will use it.
Yeah, but uh, it took a while to ramp up. And then there were changes along the way. We did a lot of interop events to make sure that it all worked. Um, and it's been 20 years. This is the 20th anniversary. This like right now, May.
You know, I actually met Friendly when I was working for that international long distance carrier, which actually made the first step into internet connectivity, right, and became an ISP. So they didn't
Interesting.
had they didn't had any way of doing remote configuration management of those routers in your home, that today you're doing in a click of a mouse, right? But so actually I met Friendly in 2006 or 7, I don't really remember, when I was working for that carrier, for that ISP. And 20 years later I'm working for Friendly. So
Eventually, we all end up. The moral of the story is, as we probably heard many times on this show, is eventually everybody ends up working for cloud services.
yeah. The next would be SaaS, right?
Yep.
Or SaaS service. But yeah, that was, I really think that this technology change came quite handy. So it made the company what it is today.
Hmm.
And now we are looking into the future. We are looking to see what would be the next leap, and what can we bring more to users, right? Because today, and you know this because you are in the domain that Wi-Fi was a major change, I think, in our lives, especially.
Oh yeah,
The number of connected devices over Wi-Fi is just growing and growing, and it became today no one actually knows the difference between Wi-Fi and internet connectivity, and
nope,
we are always talking about this because it's like, okay, I have a bad internet connectivity. It's not that I have a bad Wi-Fi connection. No one knows
right.
about this.
No, no, no. But like, and this is a super important point, especially to like the problems that you guys try to solve for ISPs, is you have to treat the entire experience with that in mind, right? That the end user's perception of what is going on has nothing to do with the reality of any technology whatsoever.
It doesn't matter. It's like, I was sitting with one of our customers, and he was telling me, look, I don't want to hear about DR69. I don't want to hear about USB. I don't want to hear about protocols that you're
Which is
managing.
fair, which is fair.
I want to hear about how you're fixing the problem that I have. Give me a solution. Don't give me and this is quite, it's fair, and it's reasonable. It's
Right.
a it's quite understandable, and that's what we are trying to do today. I think
Yep.
we are trying to resolve issues that end users, not our communication service providers, have, but their end users, like with the
Right.
connectivity,
Right.
with the Wi-Fi connectivity. We are trying to collect all of this information from their CPE, the customer premise equipment, or from the router today or device tomorrow. We are trying, to use different language for the days that will arrive in the future.
Yeah.
But we are trying to collect this information and give some value added services for the service provider, that he will be able to resolve the end user issues very easily, by
Right.
identifying what is the root cause, by doing some automation, using some machine learning and also AI algorithms in the future for troubleshooting.
Correlating, and I imagine there's some correlation of the information from multiple CPE over an entire deployment, right?
Yeah. And that's what makes our or my work very interesting, because from one hand I'm responsible on Friendly's product line of products as well, but on the other hand I'm also responsible for all the operation side. So I always have a challenge between, if I want to develop more products, but okay, I have a limitation of developing and maintaining and supporting all of that. And also, there are things that we need to remember. There are some limitations within technology as well. We need to collect information. We want to collect information. We were one of the first that were telling our customers, guys, you have those routers. Let's understand what's going on there.
Right.
We have this information already there. It is well established and it is well maintained. And the Broadband Forum was doing a great job, really, by introducing some tools and methods of operation of how to collect information from those devices. Let's do that. Let's do that in a mass scale. And then we can bring additional value and understand what's going on, predict if there would be some kind of a problem, if there is some uh, reduction, and so on. And this is quite valuable, I think. This is what I find very interesting for me these days. That this is what we are doing, and focusing a lot of effort around this.
Right. 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 And it's a weird balance because uh it's the ideal world, right? If we had if there was a perfect solution, there would be a robot that resolves issues before the issues even happen, and the end user would not even know that anything happened, right? But that puts the operator in a weird position because it's like, how do you demonstrate the fact that you're doing something useful? Right? Which, whatever. That's a marketing problem. That's a marketing problem.
Yeah,
Uh,
we're
but yeah,
technology
I
guys.
found it very interesting, and some of this is because of privacy issues, but I found it very interesting how different operators have come to approach this. And we saw some of that in the conversations at the USP Summit in March, right?
Mhm.
Where you had them either branding it as a value added service that people paid extra for, right? Not very much, not very
Yeah.
much. Um, Part of that was because it had to be opt in just for legal reasons, but let's pretend that that wasn't the reason. Um, it was a choice to be like, okay, here's our base level of service. We're not going to do anything funky to try to make sure that you always have the best quality of experience at all times, right? Because there are certain things that we can do. Um, but if you just want the base level of service and you want to handle it yourself, here's this. And then if you want something more advanced, here's this value added service where we're actively managing, monitoring, and fixing problems right in real time. So that's one option. The other option is that they're literally just using it as a differentiator, right? So
Yeah.
like they offer it to everybody and they say, you know what, this is what makes us better than that other service, is that it always works.
And that's exactly, what we are trying to tell to to the operators, that you have this capability. It's not a theory of operation. It's not something that, well, we can develop advanced sometime in the future and so on. No, it is feasible. It is already there.
It's
you
all
know
real, yeah.
yeah, it's all real. The use cases, we understand the use case, we understand, and we have the data. We can
Mhm.
collect this information directly from your devices. You don't need to onboard anything, like a process that you need to embed some clients or add something to the router that make it much more sophisticated or clever or whatever. The information is there. Let's take this
Mhm.
information and provide this value added service. And this is where I think the strength of of the broadband forum developing DR69 and USP is coming very much in handy, right?
Right,
Because
right.
these are real life problems that we are trying to resolve
Mhm.
eventually. Well, yeah, we like technology,
Well,
we cannot.
yeah, but and it's like you said, when you had that customer that's like, I don't want to hear about blah blah blah, that he's right, right? And I
Yeah,
realize that it's part of my own, it's part of our own ego that like, but I worked really hard on this. Like, I
um,
want you to know more about it. But
and I'm
I don't expect the end users in the world to know what USP is. That's my
well,
cross to bear.
it's like, Wi-Fi 6, cool, nice technology. Uh,
Oh, I was just writing about that a couple weeks ago, right? It's like I applaud the Wi-Fi Alliance for coming up with that scheme, but then even at the end of the day, even with that level of this number is bigger than another number clarity,
yeah,
the end user doesn't care.
yeah.
They don't care.
And you know what I will say? Well, I have a bad internet connection.
Hmm. Yep.
And that's even more surprising. But I fully understand this, and this would be also the challenges that we saw coming, not just with any radio technology that is emerging today within your home. Well, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth really matter. We had these discussions as well about this, because at the end, and we are trying to make people's life easier with technology, like
Hmm.
eSIM, right? eSIM was for you to move between different operators, between different mobile operators more easily without the need of replacing that SIM, waiting for someone to send it to you, and so on, back and forth.
Yep. Yep.
So it is developing, but it's not. In a few years, people will forget that there was something called SIM. You know,
Right, 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 right.
it will disappear.
Yeah. Which is interesting because the industry relied on it for so long because it had very nice other consequences of its existence, right? Security and whatnot,
It was the first two-factor authentication.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Definitely, you had someone. So he signed this, so you knew who get this. So and he was updating. So yeah, and our purpose, because we're technology guys, that we like technology and we like the enhancement and what it can bring, but we are always thinking about applications, about real life applications, what users will be able to do that. And for me as a product manager, it's also quite important because my main goal is to develop something that people would use. Because developing something which is, a nice new technology, but no one will ever use it, well, that's cool.
Yes. Yeah.
That, that's a great thing, but it's not what we are looking for. So eventually we see that this transformation to data analytics, to understanding and giving more value added services to the service providers of the world eventually will make the overall user experience or service experience that we are talking today, right? We're talking about, once we were talking about quality of experience, now it's going, okay, I want to deep dive into the specific user experience. Is his streaming working fine? Gaming is working without any issues, and so on. So we are trying to evolve and provide better service, I think, throughout the years.
Right.
And this is what we are doing constantly. We are
Right. Right. Right.
reshaping and refocusing our product as well. And I think these are exciting, new features that are
No,
rising.
and that's cool. That really brings it full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning because it's now, right? Like you're not just thinking about that. You're thinking about how it affects the end users.
Yep.
And ultimately that means a cultural shift, right? Like they're going to experience connectivity in a different way with the new stuff that we're doing, right? And so they're going to be able to do different things that they never did before, experience the internet in a way that they haven't done before, right? And that feeds down to what they're going to do with it and what people trust to do with it and how it affects I mean, but COVID's the biggest example. It's the biggest example, right? Like
Definitely.
now that a bunch of services have come online that are totally mission critical and have to have like perfect quality of experience, like
Definitely, but again, what will be the problem is that no one will know that this was the work that we did.
uh,
It's like
I will rest easy knowing that I will get no thanks for this.
you're like working in the dark. Yeah, um, but yes, I think that eventually, and well, the first applications of TR69, we talked about this. That the first application was actually to make this easier, but not just for the ISPs of the world, but also to the users, because I don't think that many people remember how hard it was from the user perspective, from the end user perspective, to connect to the internet, with those dial-up, and which never worked and broke, and you had always to call someone, and how it is today. And also with Wi-Fi, we're seeing the same thing. A few years ago, you had terrible experience with your Wi-Fi. Today, we are providing tools for the operators to have an auto resolution, to identify where is the root cause for a certain problem,
Mhm.
also to offer additional services or solutions, like a mesh solution that will eventually might resolve the problem, and so on. So I think that, and this also happened in a very short period of time, because
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
think about this.
yeah.
2007 2006 was Amendment 1 or 2005. I don't really remember
Yeah.
when was the first amendment for TL69. So it was 2004, I think, released, and then
But and we have to count that amendment because before that, Tier
before
68
that,
didn't actually work. So
yeah. So we are counting from, let's say, 2005.
yeah,
So
yeah,
in a very short period of time, we had a very big achievement, I think, and the service landscape changed dramatically.
right.
And today, no one is talking about, throughput, or they're talking about, okay, the experience, the user
Right.
experience, and how we can
Okay.
improve.
Let me ask you a question about that because I know that this is something that you guys deal with specifically in some, as part of your service offering, right? So one of the things I've talked about a lot on the show is how the broadband experience and the internet experience and connected devices are all it was a clash between consumer electronics and networking, right?
Mhm.
And so you guys, I mean, this is really a question. It's kind of a statement, but it's also a question. One of the problems that you end up solving for ISPs is a lot of bring your own stuff devices, right? That consumers are buying and
Mhm.
connecting, and then who knows what happens, right? And it's driving some of the Wi-Fi problems. It's driving all this stuff, right? I'm curious about the ramp up of that, like how you guys have experienced that and how it ended up being a problem that had to be solved, right?
Well, actually, uh, that was one, I think, of the main initiatives when we were discussing with the operators about, okay, what problems do you have? And it was like, let's take Wi-Fi as an example. Like everybody was bring your own device, but something is not working, it's not connecting, I have problems, I'm not syncing. And that was the first initiative, and then they had this big explosion of calls to the service, to the support center. Okay,
I
I have a
imagine.
problem. So we had to bring more insight and valuable information to the operator, to the ISP, to tell him, okay, you can troubleshoot this remotely. You don't need to send a technician. Exactly, we actually we were trying to resolve a problem that was back in 2005 or 6, when you had to send a technician for onboarding a new router.
Right.
Now you had to send a technician for every Wi-Fi problem. It's
And
insane.
that would be crazy. That would be totally unsustainable. Imagine if you
Yeah,
had to send a tech for every time somebody bought a IP camera, right? Like,
yeah. And it's not just an IP. It was an IP camera. Now you have so many different devices that are connecting to your home router. Uh, so I think that was the main initiative that we wanted to start working on, to resolve these issues for our customers and bring them those value added services. And again, the main issue from our point of view is to keep it simple. All we want is to keep it simple. We don't want to tell you, okay, you need to upgrade, you need to update, you need to do something. The information is there. Let's extract this. Let's get this
cool.
information and see how we can create some value added services out of it.
Right.
And I think this is what we are trying to do. From my visit to the customers, it's going in the right direction. We
That's
see
cool.
this. We see this.
Yeah, it like basically solving it from the path of least resistance, right? Because it would
Yeah,
be unrealistic to totally revamp the way that the way they're deploying things and the way that the end users are buying things. There's no that they're not going to change that overnight. So like that's cool.
yeah. I guess this will not happen. This will not be the case. And it is exciting. It is exciting to see that. Every product manager wants to see that his product is being consumed and used by others, and that he did develop something that is worthwhile, right?
It is, right? It's like your
It's not,
child, right? Like
yeah. You want to see him grow, you want to see him
yes.
walk, and and he started walking, and I think that now we're getting to the phase that, well, the product is running. Okay, it was walking and now it's running. So I think that we are enhancing and these are, and also, you mentioned about USP, which is right around the corner, or it's actually here, but
Mhm.
not many are using this. And this is the next evaluation or evolution that we will have with managing those routers devices that are coming in the future, right? So yeah, we have our work cut out for us, I think.
I always try. It's like every time I think about how it is the 20th anniversary of Tier 69, I'm like, oh, well, good thing I set the stage for another 20 years of career before.
I think we'll be here in another 20 years to discuss about the next thing that replaces USB. But uh, yeah, it's definitely something that, and again, it takes me back to how fortunate we are, I think, to see this transition of technology. Because
Yeah.
we are technology guys.
Well,
We
and we
all,
get to use it. It's the cool thing about our industry is that we're also making the stuff that we end up using.
yeah. I had a problem with Wi-Fi at home, and it's like, okay, let's
This
try
is
to.
unacceptable.
So they sold me a mesh network, so that was easy.
But that was totally wild when we did the survey. So we would for the audience, we've done a survey in 2020, and then we did another one last year of just about to ISPs and how they're doing stuff right now, right? And it was interesting to see the number of answers where it was like, well, how are you solving Wi-Fi problems right now? And they're like, oh, we just throw more APs at it.
We're just creating a bigger problem. That's how we'll resolve this in the future. But hey, yeah, but well, that's a strategy, and I think
Yeah,
that we are trying also to bring some insight and insights about what's going on. And eventually, I think that customers today are much more demanding than we were in the past, because we are used to technology, and we are used that this technology is working all the time. You know,
hmm
I'm not sure how many of our listeners, viewers, whoever is going to consume this podcast, and I think millions will see this, but
yes,
how much of them are familiar with telco grade, which is something that grew up in the telco business, that says, okay, you want to have like 5 nines, which means that 99.999% of
yeah,
time the
yeah,
service should be available.
right,
And this is what we are doing. We are trying to make the service available in a telco grade. And
right,
that's why people today, I think, are much more demanding, because they're used to get a good service.
right,
And that's why, from my point of view, we see that this transformation from, okay, I don't care how much bandwidth you will sell me. I was getting a call a few weeks ago from my ISP, and he said, well, I want to upgrade you from, I don't know, I have, I think, 400 megabits to whatever number they're offering today, 600, 7. And I was, no, thank you, I'm fine.
yeah,
And, well, it will not cost you anything. And I'm saying, okay, guys, I don't really care, but I'm fine. I'm really cool with what I have, because I don't have a problem with bandwidth. I don't have a problem with
right.
throughput. I have a problem with other issues, with latency problems. Sorry,
Oh yeah,
um, with application, with interference, with other things that are might be causing a. I want to understand that my quality of service is high, and not my
right,
throughput, because it doesn't matter even today. And I think that was also something that we found out, that many of the customers today are seeing, and that the bandwidth is actually out of the question.
right. And to kind of put the icing on this, like it's it is a an entire sort of sea change for operators from a marketing and sales perspective to understand that they can't just throw bigger numbers at people anymore,
Yeah,
right?
it's gone.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is a company today. Well,
how am I supposed to market something if I can't say it's faster?
Say it's better. Oh,
Yeah,
better is good. It's
yeah,
like, oh,
reliable, right?
reliable, better. You can do much more. And I think, but the customer has grown accustomed to this, right? So he
Hmm.
knows that he's getting a good service,
Right.
and he wants to see also, and it takes us back to the same complaint that they had all the time, that my internet is not working, even though the problem is not in with your ISP or with the connectivity. Maybe the problem is elsewhere. But
Right.
again, it will always be the same thing. And I
Hmm.
think that we're also talking about the future and about the connected home and what will be in the connected home, and how our devices, or whatever we will have in our home, the sensors, the actuators, smart whatever, bulb, door lock, or whatever we will have, how they will connect and or communicate, and where the customer will be calling if he will have a problem.
Yeah, right.
And
Spoiler alert, they're always going to blame it on the network connectivity. We already know that.
yeah, and asking the operators, it's like, well, we don't think so, or we hope not.
That's the whole thing, right? And this comes right back down to what we were talking about in the beginning about how you have to everything. The only thing that matters is the user's perspective. That's it. That's all that matters, right? And like it is better, and I've learned so much about this in my life personally about leaning into things rather than trying to defend and avoid them, right? So like if you know that you're going to get blamed anyway, maybe you should lean into that and just
Yeah,
take ownership of it.
let's go with the stream. It's like,
Yeah.
if you can beat them, join them. But it's not that we're trying to do. We're trying to improve things, I think, and we're trying to make it better. So that's our goal, and I think this is why we are trying to develop new products, and also new standards and new technologies that we will be using to do that. So,
Mhm.
yep.
Even if it is totally thanklessly.
Yeah, we will never get someone that will say, "Oh, thank you, Jason, for developing this very nice USB protocol." But we will know that, Jason. We
Yeah,
will
that's
know
true.
this.
That's true. And that brings me to, because as I wrap up, that brings me to my fundamental point about all these shows that we do, right? So thank you, Svi. I appreciate it. This is awesome. I knew that we would end up filling this amount of time extremely quickly. So
Yeah, it went like 5 minutes. I thought that we were talking just 5 minutes, but yeah,
it really does seem that way, doesn't it? Cool. So I will take you up on that. In a year, we'll do this again.
definitely.
Um, And so yeah, it's Tzvi is a subscriber to our podcast, so join him and click on that button too. Even if you don't do it on YouTube, do it on Apple Podcasts or any of your favorite podcast platforms. Well, you don't get to see our faces, but hey, it's still pretty entertaining. And above all, even if it is a thankless job, own the nerdy things that you love and have fun doing them. Thank
Cool.
you, Tzvi.
Thank you very much, Jason. I really liked it.